Maria, you know what? I'm feeling nostalgic today.
Why is that, Renzo?
Nostalgic for, you know, days before we were constantly bombarded with notifications and emails and just like so much technology around us all the time. Simpler
I
times.
I could not agree more. The other day I was in the subway and I looked around and every single person in the subway car was glued to their phone. You know, when you have your neck down
Hmm.
watching it.
Hey, I'm
And
guilty of that often.
me too. I usually am reading and I feel less bad because I'm reading, but I'm still looking down. And I realized, wow, I don't know, if somebody walks inside the cart with like a gun, they wouldn't notice. That's where my mind goes.
Oh,
But
that's
but
dark.
but let me bring you to a better place.
Yes, please. That's the whole point.
Funny you mentioned nostalgia because in the episode of News in Slow Spanish Latino of this week, on top of the news stories and the grammar and expression lesson, we discuss those games that we played as kids because we grew up without the
Oh, yeah.
internet, without
Yes,
social media,
in
without
times before the internet, where we went
exactly
outside and touched grass and looked at the sun.
and
Not
play.
directly at the sun, though. That's not good for your eyes.
I did. I actually must confess, I was 9 years old and I
Oh,
met
no.
somebody who had light brown eyes. And I realized in the sun, my eyes look light brown. So I started staring straight at the sun, hoping my eyes would brighten up and look light brown.
Oh, no. I hope you didn't have any long-lasting effects. But before
I
we
don't,
stray,
fortunately.
good. Before we stray too far away from the topic, we're going back to nostalgia and the games we used to play when we were kids. And that's perfect for the expression that we're covering today, because those games son del año de la pera. You know that expression?
El año de la pera, of
Yes.
course. Sí, yo nací en el año de la pera.
Oh, don't date. No, don't be so. No, don't date yourself like that. No, del año de la pera.
The year of the pear.
Of the pear. And we'll get to the origin in just a moment. You're going to love this. But yeah, the year of the pear. Such a strange expression. Why a pear? Why the year of the pear? Was it like a.
What is the meaning? What is the equivalent expression in English?
It means something that's really old, and often it's used to describe something that's outdated or out of fashion. But yeah, it's not unfair to characterize these games, the games of our childhood before the internet, as games del año de la pera. And an English expression that would be the equivalent could be something like as old as the hills. Have you heard that one?
No,
Oh,
first
yeah.
time.
Now, I'm not sure what the origin of that is, as old as the hills. Maybe our listeners know, but I do know about el año de la pera.
Okay, so circling back onto the games, we used to play el elástico, la perinola, tag, la ere,
Yeah.
el escondite, hide and seek.
Hide and seek.
But all that information is in our episode of News in Slow Spanish Latino of this week. But let's circle back to just the Spanish phrase.
Mhm.
El año de la pera. What is the origin?
Oh, this one is so I looked it up, and it actually has many possible origins. It's one of those expressions that's very old. Es una expresión del año de la pera. So, the exact origins are kind of lost to history, and there are multiple theories that all are plausible. But I love the theories for this expression. So, one of the favorite ones, is that, get this, it's not about a pear at all. Pera, pear, apple, pear.
Pera.
No.
So, is there any other Spanish word for pera that is not pear?
Well, this is so complicated, but there was a bandolier, or I guess a troubadour from Catalonia, un bandolero catalán from the 17th century, called Perot Rocaguinarda. And he's a very famous character from the 17th century, appears in the Quijote under a nickname Roque Guinard. And his name, Perot, at the time, was pronounced like pera.
Oh, wow. So it's a name. El
Yes.
año de Perot, el año de la pera.
Yes, and because he was a troubadour singing about things from long ago, even then in the 17th century, saying that something was del año de la pera was like an allusion to this famous troubadour who sang about things from even further back.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
I love it.
So strange. I love it too, but that's not the only explanation for el año de la pera. Another theory is that there used to be, like in the early days of electricity, el año de la pera.
Mm-hmm.
All right. There used to be these light switches that people had above their beds. Now, I never had one like this, but apparently it was the shape of a pear, like the fruit.
Wow. No, I don't think I've ever had one of those
Yeah,
either.
I don't
But the
remember
año de
those.
la pera is when the light switch were shaped as a pear.
Yep. And then
I think I believe more in the Quixote and Perot story.
I know, I really like
origin.
that one. But this one is one of my favorites too. It's probably the least likely, but I have to mention it because it's great. And it really connects to this idea of things that go out of fashion, right?
Mhm.
Fuera de moda. So there was a very popular men's beard style in the 19th century, which was called the perilla or little pear. And it was basically a very thin, very narrow goatee right at the chin, shaped like a teardrop, but inverted. So think
Oh,
like
like a pear.
balloon. Yeah, like
Yeah.
a pear upside down. A pointy at the bottom and rounded right under the lip. And that hairstyle was very popular for a while, but then it became outdated, out of fashion. And so when people said el año de la pera, they were talking about out of style hair, beard.
Wow, you have a style from El Año de la Pera.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, I still go with el Perot theory.
Perot roquinart.
Yeah, but to finish this episode on a more positive note and not of all the things we have lost, I read the other day on the newspaper that the new generations are reading more printed books.
Oh, like books on paper.
Yes, books on paper. And I read Barnes & Noble is opening a bunch of new stores. So I have the hope that even though we've been using social media for a while and digital services for a while, we will be nostalgic of El Año de la Pera, and we will come back to that and do certain things that we used to do before, like this series with 11 Stranger Things.
Mm-hmm.
The series, after those series, many kids started buying Walkman and listening to tapes.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping we can rescue some of the good old traditions from El Año de la Pera and use them now.
Yeah, things always come back, and that's, I can think, the nature of fashion. I love that fashion's coming back after a while because of nostalgia. Cosas del año de la pera coming back.
Would you wear that little goatee shape, pear shape?
I think my goatee days are behind me. Yeah, but I can't wait for mustaches to be cool again.
They're on and off. I still see people with mustaches.
Maybe it's just me. I can't pull off a mustache. But I am thinking about cosas del año de la pera. What you just said about reading again, that makes me feel good. I came to you today feeling nostalgic, but the idea that people are reading more books, that there are more Barnes and Nobles, and hopefully other small bookstores as well, that really, it fills me with hope.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I think unless you watch Adolescence, which I know you started watching yesterday.
Yeah, that was last week's episode. You told me I should start watching it, and I did.
Yeah.
It's so gut-wrenching.
That will not make you recover faith in youth, but I know very many young people who are like reading books, being activists and socially engaged, community engaged. So there's hope.
And speaking of which, if you want to be engaged with the community and read news that's not just in 150 characters or less, you could check out News in Slow Spanish, where we have in-depth articles, discussions about those articles, all at a pace that you can understand, of course, and scripts that you can read. And then
You can talk with us in rooms
That's
and
right.
talk about those news or about White Lotus season 3 or about adolescence or about
or about games that are outdated.
Anything you want to discuss in Spanish.
Del año de la pera. But exactly, in Spanish, what a great way to learn and also to stay up to date.
Yes, newsinslowspanish.com. We'll see you there.
Bye-bye.